Once upon a time, there was a young man named Stephen who was very interested in Zen teachings. He traveled to a Zen monastery and asked to be a student of the Zen master. The Zen master agreed to take Stephen as his student, and he taught him the ways of Zen. One day, the Zen master said to Stephen, "I will teach you 5 ways to have self-respect. The first way to have self-respect is to be honest with yourself. This means knowing your strengths and weaknesses and accepting them for what they are. It also means being true to yourself, even when it is difficult." Stephen thought about the Zen master's words, and he realized that he had been lacking in self-respect. He had always been a perfectionist, and he was always trying to be someone he wasn't. He was also very critical of himself, and he was always putting himself down. The Zen master told Stephen that he needed to learn to accept himself for who he was. He said that Stephen's strengths and weaknesses were both part of who he was, and that he needed to embrace both of them. He also said that Stephen needed to be true to himself, even if it meant making mistakes. Stephen took the Zen master's words to heart, and he started to work on being more honest. He started to acknowledge his strengths and weaknesses, and he started to be more true. He also started to be more patient, and he allowed himself to make mistakes. As Stephen became more honest, he started to feel better about himself. He was more confident, and he was more assertive. He was also happier, and he was more at peace. The second way to have self-respect is to be responsible for your own actions. This means taking ownership of your mistakes and learning from them. It also means being accountable for your own choices and the consequences of those choices. Stephen had always been a bit of a loner, and he often blamed others for his problems. He would say things like, "If only my parents had been more supportive," or "If only my friends had been more understanding." The Zen master told Stephen that he needed to learn to take responsibility for his own actions. He said that Stephen couldn't blame others for his problems, and that he needed to learn from his mistakes. He also said that Stephen needed to be accountable for his own choices and the consequences of those choices. Stephen took the Zen master's words to heart, and he started to work on being more responsible for his own actions. He started to acknowledge his mistakes, and he started to learn from them. He also started to be more mindful of his choices and to think about the consequences of those choices. As Stephen became more responsible for his own actions, he started to feel better about himself. He was more confident and assertive. He was also happier and at peace with himself. The third way to have self-respect is to be kind to yourself. This means treating yourself with the same compassion and understanding that you would treat others. It also means being patient with yourself and allowing yourself to make mistakes. Stephen had always been very hard on himself. He would often beat himself up for making mistakes, and he would never give himself credit for his accomplishments. The Zen master told Stephen that he needed to learn to be kinder to himself. He said that Stephen needed to treat himself with the same compassion and understanding that he would treat others. He also said that Stephen needed to be patient with himself, and that he needed to allow himself to make mistakes. Stephen took the Zen master's words to heart, and he started to work on being kinder to himself. He started to be more patient with himself, and he started to forgive himself for his mistakes. He also started to be more grateful for his accomplishments, and he started to celebrate his successes. As Stephen became kinder to himself, he started to feel better about himself. He was more confident, and he was more assertive. He was also happier, and he was more at peace with himself. The fourth way to have self-respect is to set boundaries. This means knowing what you are willing to accept and what you are not willing to accept. It also means being able to say no when you need to. Stephen had always been a people pleaser. He would often say yes to things that he didn't want to do, just to make other people happy. He would also let people take advantage of him, because he didn't want to rock the boat. The Zen master told Stephen that he needed to learn to set boundaries. He said that Stephen needed to know what he was willing to accept and what he was not willing to accept. He also said that Stephen needed to be able to say no when he needed to. Stephen took the Zen master's words to heart, and he started to work on setting boundaries. He started to be more mindful of his commitments, and he started to say no to things that he didn't want to do. He also started to be more assertive, and he started to stand up for himself. As Stephen became better at setting boundaries, he started to feel better about himself. He was more confident, and he was more assertive. He was also happier, and he was more at peace with himself. The fifth way to have self-respect is to take care of yourself. This means eating healthy foods, getting enough sleep, and exercising regularly. It also means taking time for yourself and doing things that you enjoy. Stephen had always been a bit of a workaholic. He would often work long hours, and he would neglect his own needs. He would also eat unhealthy foods, and he would get very little sleep. The Zen master told Stephen that he needed to learn to take care of himself. He said that Stephen needed to eat healthy foods, get enough sleep, and exercise regularly. He also said that Stephen needed to take time for himself, and that he needed to do things that he enjoyed. Stephen took the Zen master's words to heart, and he started to work on taking care of himself. He started to eat healthier foods, and he started to get more sleep. He also started to exercise regularly, and he started to take time for himself to do things that he enjoyed. As Stephen started to take better care of himself, he started to feel better about himself. He was more confident, and he was more assertive. He was also happier, and he was more at peace with himself. As Stephen practiced the 5 ways, he began to notice a difference in his life. He was more confident, he was more assertive, and he was happier. He also started to attract positive people into his life, and he was able to achieve his goals more easily. One day, the Zen master asked Stephen how he was doing. Stephen told the Zen master that he was feeling much better, and that he was grateful for the 5 ways. The Zen master smiled and said, "I am glad that the 5 ways have helped you. Remember, self-respect is the foundation of a happy and fulfilling life." The moral of the story is that self-respect is essential for a happy and fulfilling life. When we have self-respect, we are more confident, assertive, and happy. We are also more likely to attract positive people into our lives, and we are more likely to achieve our goals. Respect yourself enough to walk away from anything that no longer serves you, grows you, or makes you happy. Self-respect is the cornerstone of all virtue. To be beautiful means to be yourself. You don't need to be accepted by others. You need to accept yourself. Self-respect is the first step towards gaining respect from others. When you learn to love yourself, you'll stop settling for less than you deserve. Your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. Respect yourself enough to know that you deserve the very best. Self-respect is not a luxury, it is a necessity for a fulfilling life. When you have self-respect, you set the standard for how others should treat you. Self-respect is a reflection of your inner strength and understanding of your worth. Remember, self-respect is essential for a healthy and fulfilling life. Treat yourself with kindness, set boundaries, and value your worth. When you respect yourself, others are more likely to treat you with the respect you deserve.